Good evening. Welcome to a meeting of the Plymouth Charter Commission, coming to you from the Great Hall in Plymouth. Let's start tonight's meeting with a salute of the flag. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So there will be 5 members of the commission physically present here and another, at least 2, maybe 3 on Zoom. So tonight, we haven't had a meeting for several weeks, but we are meeting tonight, and if we don't finish tonight, we'll go over to Monday. Not sure yet whether we'll complete our agenda. But we still have business to do between now and the election on May 20th. And thank you for coming tonight. The items that we're covering, I've sent you materials, and Michelle has sent you materials through emails that we'll be discussing. The first item is the charter ballot summary. Then we're going to talk about the estimated costs associated with the new charter. We'll discuss some of the comments made on the charter to see if we believe the charter provisions are being understood the way they were drafted. And we will have public comment at 8:30 tonight as set forth in our agenda. So on the ballot law summary, I want to give you a full explanation in the full disclosure, transparency, exactly what's been happening with the ballot law summary for the past few weeks. As you know, the Charter Commission operates under Chapter 43B of the Massachusetts General Laws, which is a state statute that lays out everything from A to Z in the Charter Commission process. Every single section, from the initial putting the charter question on the ballot in the spring of when you start, electing the commissioners, the 9 commissioners town-wide, and then what they do for the next 2 years when different things are supposed to be done, deadlines, drafts, preliminary drafts, final drafts, when reports have to be made, who is in the process, who gets to speak, who doesn't. We have to submit our draft, not to anybody here in town, but to the Attorney General, which we did last September, and it was approved by the AG's office. Also to our own special counsel, a lawyer in Boston, at Anderson and Krieger. He also approved our charter. Every single provision in the charter is being legal and fully authorized, and the commission empowered to write those provisions into our charter. So there's no question about legality of any of the provisions in this charter. We acted with the consultants, probably the best consultants in the state, because they've handled charters across the Commonwealth for literally hundreds of towns. And we had great advice as to what would work in some towns and what didn't work in other towns. So we didn't start down any blind dead-end paths. And we think that things that are in this charter will work. Either they've already been time-tested or our consultants have thought that they will work. So that's how the charter came about. And it was finally produced just before Christmas, and we've been editing it. We edited it right up until the end, and in the end of the year, and then it goes on the ballot in May. And if it's voted affirmatively, it'll take effect on July 1st. Some provisions is a rollout for longer effective dates if there are elective positions involved and so forth. So it's all set forth here, and we're getting near the end of the prescribed sections, and Section 11 of the Massachusetts General Laws says that when a new charter or single charter revision is being submitted in an election, a brief summary of its basic provisions will be prepared by the Charter Commission. And it says the Charter Commission will prepare the summary, and and it goes on the ballot. That's it. It doesn't go to any board in town, any individual. We prepare the summary. It goes to the ballot. It's printed, and the ballot, then you'll see it when you're there in May. And that's the process, and that's the process that's been going on for ever since this chapter was written. This statute was written back in the late 50s and early 60s. And that's what we did. It says that we have to have the summary to the town clerk at least 35 days prior to the election. That gives her time enough to get it typeset or whatever and get it to the printer. And I understand that the deadline was yesterday or today or tomorrow. It's a little bit, it's in that bailiwick. They have to get the thing printed, and so if it's going to be on the ballot in time on May 20th. So, as we were tasked to do, we started a draft, and every commissioner participated. I looked at, I think, 5 or 6 different summaries of charters, including the charters of Fall River, Chelmsford, Framingham, Amherst, and I think 1 or 2 others, as I was preparing the Plymouth summary. So it's not as though we're just creating something out of whole cloth. We're setting forth the basic provisions in the charter. And those are models that I had provided that have already been on ballots. Other commissioners here then edited it, made changes to it. Some sections were totally rewritten, but we kept the wording of the summary less than 500 words. I think it came in at 461 words, although there is no limit. But I'm told that our summary is about of average length for a charter with as many changes in it as we have. So last Tuesday, the 11th of April, I presented the final summary to the town clerk. I think she was actually pleased that she got it ahead of time by about a week. And we were told at the time, actually, Mr. Pizer, the vice chair, was part of that process too, being a former town clerk, that the town also wanted to present a summary of our charter, because there's a provision in our existing charter that says anytime there's a ballot question on the ballot, anytime there's a ballot question, the town, through the select board, will present what a yes vote is in 1 sentence and what a no vote is in 1 sentence. It's written into the charter. So they said that, yes, the Charter Commission can do its own summary, as the statute provides, but they would also like to comply with that provision in the current charter. So it was all agreed that our summary would appear. Also, the town's summary would appear with a yes or no vote, just so we've complied with both the statute that exists for charters, as well as the special little 2-line provision in our existing charter anytime there's a ballot question. I thought that was the end of it. But apparently it wasn't, because a couple of days ago, let's see, today's Wednesday. On Monday, I got a call from our counsel, George Hall, at Anderson and Krieger, and he informed me that he'd been contacted by the town manager and asked to make changes to the charter. And this, I'm just getting this all on a phone call. So they talked back and forth about possible changes to the charter, to the summary of the charter, and looked at wording in our summary, and the manager thought that some of the statements should be toned down a bit or whatever. And I believe they agreed on a set of changes, which I sent to you this afternoon, which is a markup, a red line version of our summary. with the changes that Mr. Hall, Council Hall, proposed, and he tells me that the town manager said that they look, quote, reasonable to him. And that was on Monday. Thinking then when we were finished, said I would present them tonight, because we were meeting tonight, Wednesday, for your consideration is whether or not you want to make the changes to our summary. You don't have to. It's up to the commission. The commission is the total one responsible for the summary, no one else. And that we would go from there. I thought, again, that we were finished until I got a call just before this meeting that apparently the town manager, again, had weighed in with our council, and they had serious communications this afternoon back and forth, of which I'm not privy. I don't know what they said. I didn't see anything. I didn't get copies of anything. So I don't have anything even to talk to you about, except that they were talking about further changes, some radical, to our summary. And no agreement was reached or whatever. But that's all I know about it. I don't have any of the substance. You saw what happened at the select board meeting last night. At the end of the meeting, it came up as a non-agenda item. It was obviously apparent to me that there was some confusion at that level as to who's had what role, and I'm not sure they even realized that there were two charter summaries to be on the ballot, one prepared by the town and the other one prepared by the commission. In any event, it ended up in sort of, nobody kind of knew what was happening. And that's where we are. So let me read, I want to just reiterate and read a couple of things to you, to our audience as well. When we wrote the original summary and edited it, and the commission felt it was a final product a week ago, on Tuesday, April 11th, I did get an opinion of council, our council, and I'd just like to read it because it's pretty short. He says, and I'm now quoting from our legal counsel who read our summary that we originally prepared. He says, I think it is well done, and I don't have any suggested revisions. I note that Chapter 43B, Section 11 states that there should appear on the ballot right below the question a brief summary, and he's quoting now, of its basic provisions, composition and mode of selection of the legislative and executive branches and school committee, or if a change of none of these is involved, the most significant proposed change, end of quote. This requires, this is our counsel again now speaking in his opinion. And by the way, I gave copies of this opinion along with the summary to the town clerk to circulate in Plymouth, just so she would see that our summary was supported by a legal opinion of recognized counsel. So he goes on to say, this requires that you balance the requirement of brevity with the need to be adequately descriptive of what the Charter Commission believes are the most significant changes. I think your summary is certainly sufficiently thorough to meet the statutory requirement, but I don't think it's too long. A summary of less than 500 words meets the requirements of brevity given the scope of the changes. It's also factually accurate in its description of the changes without veering into advocacy. The summary obviously reflects some choices on your part about what to emphasize and what to gloss over more briefly. Those choices are ones that the commission is supposed to make, and they seem reasonable to me. And that was the opinion that accompanied our summary. The changes that he and the town manager discussed 2 days ago, which I sent to you, also came with a brief statement from our counsel, because he was the one who worked on the changes with the town manager. He says, he's writing to me now, having made those changes that you saw, the marked up version of the summary. He said, I sent this red line to the town manager noting that they were my ideas, meaning council's ideas, not yours, and certainly not the Charter Commission, as it hasn't met to discuss them. In most cases, I simply added the words continue to or continue to in order to make clear when the summary is describing something that is unchanged from the current charter. I told them that the word may, in reference to holding the January town meeting, remember this is always seems to be an issue, although I'm not sure why, since our charter says you may hold the January meeting, not shall, very clear, may, and in the very next line it says, but that can be waived by a vote of the select board or the council of the committee of precinct chairs. It couldn't be clearer that that January town meeting is optional and subject to waiver. And he says here, I told him the word may was actually what is written in the charter. You are not at all inclined to accept the change to shall, and that your interpretation must has the textual support more than the town manager. Then he talks about other changes. He says, I wouldn't try to arm twist you into accepting these changes because I don't think there's anything wrong with the way you had it before. Someone on the select board obviously thinks this positive spin constitutes advocacy, and I think that's parsing things too closely. So then he goes on to say, that said, I also don't think this language actually adds very much. The sentences are clearer and more direct without adjectives. The processes you describe speak for themselves. I don't think it's a concession to trim them. So he's saying if you want to trim back some of the wording, and you'll see it in that markup, go ahead and do it. He doesn't believe it makes any substantive change. And with that, he sent us the version that I sent out, I think this afternoon. I got it yesterday afternoon, and you got it today. And you'll see the changes at some point here in a few minutes. I think we should decide whether or not we want to make these changes responsive to what town council, or our council rather, commission council and the town manager talked about. So that is basically where we are as of tonight. I don't know that, and maybe they're even thinking of further changes, but again, I just want to stress that what this commission does is up to this commission. We're complying with the statute. If things really, well, I'm not even going to posture it. I don't think there's anything here that could cause any kind of a vote to be overturned one way or the other. Or won't say anything more since I wasn't privy to those conversations between our council and the town manager. I'm not sure. I have to say, I'm not sure why he didn't contact a member of the commission. I got no call or no email or anything from him. Instead, he decided to call our council directly. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for discussion. My colleagues.
Derek is on and has his hand raised.
Pardon me?
Derek is online on Zoom and he has his hand raised if you'd like me to bring him in to talk to you.
He wants to speak?
He does have his hand
Well, let's let the commissioners speak for a minute, and then we'll take people from the audience. Larry.
I was going to say I'm confused, but I'm going to say I find it irregular for someone outside the commission to be speaking to our council rather than speaking to the commission or asking the commission's permission to speak to council. I understand that there's a relationship between the town of Plymouth and the town manager with this particular law firm in other matters, but we are the ones to make the decisions and not council. And I'm feeling put upon that we were bypassed.
Right. Okay. David.
I have no objections to the red lines that are proposed because they're not substantive changes. They're,
Right.
you know, it doesn't change our intent. And the second thing is, I certainly want to try to get to a place where there's not two summaries, because then it will confuse people or their eyes will glaze over and they won't read either of them and they'll just ignore the question. So, one, I'm okay with the markups, and secondly, I would like somehow to get to a single summary that we can all agree on, because I'm just afraid more and more text is just going to turn people off.
Anybody else? Yes, I know. Is there anybody here that wants to speak?
Bill? Bill, this is Betsy
Yeah.
Hall.
All right, Betsy.
I'm alarmed that the town manager did this. I'm alarmed as a resident of the town of Plymouth. I think that the town manager way overstepped his position as town manager, that he wasted money that the town has to spend on legal counsel. That was completely unnecessary. He could have come directly to the commission. He could have asked the commission to hold a meeting. Bill, I have a question and then a motion. The question is, did you say that this needs to be finalized within the next couple of days?
That's what I understand the process to be. Larry, having been down this road many times, can tell you what the time constraints are. Want to give us a sense of
33 days before the election, which is today, is the last day to withdraw. And under normal circumstances, that is the day on which the town clerk gives the green light to the company that prepares our ballots. So the reason that that's important is that we now are going into absentee balloting, early balloting, and you can't do any of those without ballots. So the idea, it's not a legal question as to when these ballots have to go, but as a former town clerk, I will tell you, if the town clerk is willing to wait till tomorrow, I can't imagine that she'd be very happy waiting until any time after that.
So my motion is that we move forward with our ballot summary as is, because we would have to spend time on that tonight. I understand from what Mr. Abbott said that there may be more changes that they're going to come forward with between now and tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. And perhaps they do not understand the timeliness of the necessity for getting this to the town clerk in a finalized way so that it can go on the ballot for early balloting and absentee balloting. The letter that Bill Abbott read said that there's that what we've got here is absolutely fine, is not an advocacy summary. And so I think for us tonight to try to go through these red lines and say, yes, this one's okay, that one's not okay. I think that that's not a good idea. And again, I'm very alarmed that the select board asked the town manager to go forward with spending his time and our money on speaking to our council that is responsible to us. And I'm even sad that our town council, that our charter commission council did not call Mr. Abbott, our chairman, right away and say, the town manager is proposing these changes and include our chairman in this discussion. I think that that is something that is very derelict of duty here on the part of our own council. So I because of all of these considerations and concerns, I move that we just move forward with the summary that we have written.
okay, any other, did you say that Mr. Berdisi wants to speak? He's not on the. Okay. So Mr. Berdisi, I believe, is joining the meeting through Zoom.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Great.
Good evening.
Thank you for the time. I've had the opportunity to listen to the opening statement and the comments by some of the commission members. I want to provide clarity to what did transpire. I was made aware through the town clerk of the proposed statement by the Charter Commission. It was my first opportunity to review it. I communicated with the select board the proposed statement. There were questions that were raised and concerns that were raised, and I'd like to share those with you. And I think you've seen some of the red line changes that were proposed by special counsel for the Charter Commission. And so I want to talk a little bit about that first before I go on and finish my statements. But clearly, when you look at what the Charter Commission had approved, it starts off with a yes vote. Quite frankly, we already have a yes statement and a no statement at the bottom of the ballot. And I think you may have seen that on the draft ballot. So that's not relevant in the summary of the proposed charter. There are terms like government transparency and safeguards that are used. And so when this was raised from the average reader, it implies that there is no government transparency and there are no safeguards. And that's a concern, especially if you're an uninformed voter who hasn't had a chance to review the proposed amendments. And then there are big items that are missing in this summary. For example, the moderator no longer being elected by the community is going to be elected by the town meeting representation. That's a big miss in this summary, and many believe that that should have been included in this as well. And I can agree with some of the comments or red line changes that the council had made, like continue to, although it's not relevant to point out the school committee composition, the planning board composition, because those aren't changes in the proposed charter. So the question is begged, why would we include items that are not proposed changes when we want the voter, the average voter, to only have to reflect on what's being changed? So those issues were brought to my attention, and I communicated those to council from Anderson and Krieger. I've heard Ms. Hall mention how alarmed she is that I maybe circumvented the commission themselves. Quite frankly, I would say I had to short circuit this conversation and go directly to council because they're the ones that approved it. I had the opportunity to review their message to Mr. Abbott and his approval. And when I brought up these issues that I just raised to this body, he agreed with me. He said he would speak directly to Mr. Abbott and develop a red line version to reflect those concerns. That was a conversation that had taken place. And as far as the timeliness of getting this on the ballot, the town clerk said tomorrow we need to go to print. There are, according to the document that Mr. Abbott references, there are less than, I believe, 9 changes, which would take the commission probably less than 15 minutes to review. So as far as timeliness, I think that this could be done in short order. And this document that's presented is more fact-based and less biased. But I do have a concern that there's no mention of another moderator in this at all. I do think that's a big miss by the Charter Commission by not including that at all. I'm happy to answer any questions by the committee.
I'm looking at the draft that you put in front of us tonight, and I don't see anything in here about the moderator. Why isn't it even in your draft?
It's actually in the draft that was sent tonight. It was actually referenced in the comments section. So if you printed the version with the comments in it, it was definitely referenced there. Yep.
Looking at the draft that was handed me as I walked in the door and said, "This with your memo."
Do you have the comments? Do they have comments on the right side printed?
I'm looking at, and it's attached to, says summary of proposed charter. I just read through it. I don't see anything about the moderator. We've had this now basically about 45 minutes. And only to see that it doesn't even have in here the changes that you think are the most important things that we didn't put in the other one. So I'm just wondering where we're at.
So what is the question? I thought we were talking with the moderator.
No.
So are we talking about the moderator? I'm not sure where you're going, Mr. Abbott.
There's no reference to the moderator in your version that you apparently worked on late today that we just got. Any other comments from our members? Larry, have you had a chance to look at this?
Bill,
Yes, Betsy?
I have a comment. Yes, those of us who are on Zoom will not see these comments evidently. I'm not sure if the people who are present will see them either. But the haste which we need to do this with, I'm not sure. I don't know that we can discuss and decide on the moderator language tonight. We have no language in front of us to look at. Typically, we have been very strict about considering language. Also, I think I take issue with what Mr. Brindisi said about the school committee having 7 members and 5 members. The reason we included that, and perhaps Mr. Brindisi doesn't know that, is because we changed the number of select board members. And we wanted to reassure people reading our proposal and reading our charter that there are other areas where we made no changes in the size to the committee, only the select board. So I think when we decided to include that, it made sense to us because we're letting people know that we're not changing the number of people on the school committee or the planning board.
It was a clear consideration because the
Then you should have
statute
said that.
says,
It didn't say that, though.
no, the statute
That's-
says that we're supposed to set forth the basic provisions, not necessarily only changes. And we felt that we needed to mention the planning board and the school committee, even though no changes are made to either body. And
The school committee is not even reflected in the current charter. There's no mention of the school committee in the current charter. I don't, honestly, I don't want to debate this with the charter commission. I'm just bringing to fact,
pointing out to you that the-
factual information.
right.
There's
all-
no
all-
mention of the school committee in the current charter.
We have a single line in there that says the school committee shall continue to have 9 members or whatever, 7, whatever it's, and school committee will continue to have 7 members elected for 3-year terms. It's just a factual statement because people were confused as to what was happening to the school committee if we said nothing about it. The fact is, it is not being changed. And if you read the statute says you don't just report changes, you report the basic provisions of the new charter. That's a basic provision, even though it's not a change from the existing.
The
And the same
existing
thing
charter
with-
doesn't mention the school committee.
I think it does, because I remember that the former chairman of the school committee was chair of that last charter review committee. We can look it up, and certainly the new charter mentions the school committee.
It's in chapter 4, elected town boards and officers, school committee of 7 members. It's in our current charter.
Yeah, we put that in the last go-around. Yes, Larry?
I think we need to point out that it is not the responsibility, according to Section 11 of Chapter 43B, it is not the responsibility of this commission to talk about changes from the present charter to the new charter. What we're required to do is to explain the major provisions of the new charter. That's it. And therefore, whether the school committee is mentioned before, we're setting out what we consider within 491 words, what the major provisions of the new charter are, according to the Charter Commission, which is the body named as responsible for providing the summary.
Mr. Abbott, was my motion seconded? I didn't hear. The motion was seconded.
So to understand Betsy's motion, I believe it was to go ahead and proceed without any changes to the existing summary and move along. Was that your motion?
Yes.
All right, is that seconded? I'll second that motion. Ms. Cohen seconds it. Now we're having discussion. David Peck, you had a comment about why is there 2 summaries?
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to get to is a single summary.
Yeah.
So I appreciate Betsy's motion, but, I would not vote for it because I would like to counter-propose the red lines that proposed by our council seemed reasonable to me, And in fact, the select board's alternative language repeats almost everything we have here. It just deletes things. So,
I guess the select board didn't view it as an alternative. And we had this discussion last week. I think Larry was more part of it, that the select board just felt they wanted to put their own summary in because it was required, according to what the town clerk was telling them, under that provision in Chapter 5 that says every ballot law question has to have a yes and a no statement on the ballot. We thought it was very confusing too, and rather silly to have two different summaries, one right after the other. But we didn't get anywhere with that discussion. If in fact you're suggesting if they accepted Mr. Hall's modest changes and dropped their own summary, would that work?
that is what I'm suggesting.
I guess we can ask the town manager as a representative of, would that work, Mr. Bernese?
So I think what you're suggesting is that the select would violate the existing charter and not include a yes and a no statement. I think that's what the question is. And so I don't think that the select board, although they wouldn't be able to convene within 24 hours to make that decision, I guess I'll try to speak for them. I don't think that they would want to violate the existing charter as it stands.
Well, you can read what was put in there, but it just as a no vote means that the charter didn't pass, and a yes vote means yes, that it does pass. I mean, it really doesn't add any substance. Let me ask our fellow Zoom members, Wrestling, did you want to speak?
Yeah, can you hear me? Put a thumbs up if you can hear me. All right, great. I think I would really like to hear the entire red line version that Mr. Peck is talking about. If our council is recommending it, David's saying that it is not a big substantive change, I would like to hear, if we could read that into the record, the red line version that Mr. Peck is talking about. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't, speak to it, but I would definitely like to hear that red line version. And in the interest of trying to get as many people happy about this as possible, I would err on the side of what the council came up with. And unfortunately, we can't go back in time and how it happened, how it happened with the town manager and the council. But I'd really like to hear that red line version, and that's where I'm gearing towards. But I'd like to hear that because otherwise I have no idea what we're talking about.
Just two things, Wrestling, and then in response to what you just said, and then others can certainly speak to the first of all, the red line version is somewhere in your computer. It was sent out by an email, but if so, you have it there somewhere, perhaps.
You spoke about something you got 45 minutes ago.
No, the latest version I haven't seen. I've only had a few minutes. Have not had a chance to really read it. But the one that was done yesterday, that council.
Oh, okay.
And the one that was 45 minutes. Right. The other. Right. The other one, the one was done yesterday, and is the only one that our council was involved in, as I understand it. And he said that he thought the changes were reasonable. We could put that forward as a good faith, just to show our good faith, we'll make these modest changes, because we've been advised by our council that they're not substantive. They don't really change anything in the summary. That's one approach. A second approach would be to make no changes. I'm not sure there even is a plan C at this point. We really have those two choices.
Okay, yeah, if that's the case, I'd gear more towards making those changes so that more people could be happy about this. I believe Mr. Vecchi wants to speak.
I lost the sound on that. Can anybody hear them?
Wait, let one person speak at a time, please. Go ahead, Larry.
This isn't to say that I'm going to accept all of the changes that are proposed, but I think we can discuss these modest changes tonight. However, as far as your hope for one summary, the problem is that the summary that the present charter mandates requires writing by the town council with acceptance by the select board. And I don't think that there's time under the present circumstances to do that. Nor am I willing to give up the commission's prerogative to create the summary that we have. I completely agree with you that it makes no sense, but I don't think there's an alternative.
See, other comment?
Scott.
Scott Becky?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you guys for a minute. That's why I was talking. I agree with David, and I think that, you know, a good faith, you know, move towards the middle wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, as far as continues to, I mean, those aren't real huge changes. I mean, the only thing that I would like to see is when the first one where it says they struck out a yes vote. I would like to see it say a yes vote on the proposed charter would, you know what I mean? But all those other minor changes, I don't really see a huge problem with. If, like I said, if it's a good faith effort to make some simple changes, to, you know, find a common ground and get on, you know.
Seems to
Get a
me that
compromise going.
the no vote on Betsy's motion would mean that we would then proceed with the changes that are on the markup that was passed out earlier today to everybody.
Did Betsy ever get a second?
Well, we're voting on Betsy's motion still. We haven't voted yet.
Yeah, she got a second.
I voted, I
Bill
voted
Cohan was the second to it.
for, yeah, in order to discuss it, I voted
Right.
for
That's,
the supporting of the motion.
Okay, Betsy?
Yes, Bill, I'm wondering, we're not talking about any changes in terms of moderator. We're just talking about what we've seen so far. Is that correct? What came earlier today? But we're only, in other words, my motion was meant to keep what we have already done because our council said it's fine, it's no problem with it. And he says that his changes are, he in no way is advocating or recommending these changes. He's just saying they wouldn't hurt. So, but he's not saying he recommends them. So if we do go forward, if we should decide to go forward, if everyone, you know, the majority votes no on my motion, then I think we can't just say that my motion means we're going to accept everything. I still think we need to discuss line by line what the changes are. And if there are more changes that are being suggested in terms of, say, the moderator, I think we would need to discuss those before we'd approve them. I don't think we should just approve them without discussing it.
No, I think the procedure would be, if your motion is voted no, that we go through this page, wouldn't take long, go through each of these changes, is probably, you know, maybe half a dozen, that were proposed yesterday by our council. And I understood they were received by the town manager, who, according to what town council, or charter council told me, he said that the managers said they looked reasonable to him. If we accept those changes and put them forward as a sign of good faith effort to reach an accommodation tonight, to allow everything to go forward with those changes and go to the printer. We're not in a position to take on new changes being proposed now for the very first time that we haven't even looked at now for more than half an hour. So are we ready for the vote on Betsy Hall's motion?
So I have one more question, Bill. Maybe Derek or you will know the answer to this. If we vote tonight to accept the changes on this redlined version, do we have any guarantee then that the select board will say okay and let it go forward? Or can the select board have any power to whether it goes forward or not? I don't know the answer to that.
Would you
That's a
like me to
que-
answer that, Ms. Hall?
Yes,
Yes, I'd be happy to see what your opinion is on this, Mr. Parisi.
Yeah, so, as Mr. Abbott pointed out, under chapter 43B, the summary, it's very clear in this, under 43B, that this is a charter commission responsibility, not a select board responsibility. It's also very clear that there are specific requirements or expectations in the summary. What was pointed out is that some of the terms that we use I think in some opinions were biased by using terms like safeguards and government transparency, because it would suggest to some that there is no government transparency, which I would always argue against. And then there are no safeguards, which I would argue against as well. So to answer your question, this is your decision. The board is hopeful that we can find common ground and we can collectively present a ballot that is fair and balanced, so that our voters can reflect on what they think is the best form of government moving forward.
Are we ready to vote on Betsy's motion? Then we can start with this. We'll take a look at these changes that were suggested yesterday. All in favor of Betsy Hall's motion, please say aye. I guess we need to do a roll call, but you have people on Zoom. So I'll just call the roll. David Peck?
No.
Larry Pizer? No. Bill Cohan?
No.
And Frank Mann?
No.
And Scott Vecchi?
No.
Wrestling? Brewster?
no,
And Betsy Hall?
Yes.
And I'm voting no, so that motion does not carry. So the next step, if you agree, would be to go through this document that was passed out today, that's the markup of these changes. The idea being that if we put forward a document with changes that we've agreed to, that would be a sign of good faith, that we're not totally closed-minded on the issue. We made some changes. We don't believe it changes the substance. But in order to try to make the process move forward, which everybody wants, and to get a summary on the ballot in a timely manner, that we're willing to do that. If we just say no changes, period, I think that would probably indicate a lack of maybe that kind of impetus to try to get the thing done. We don't have to accept any or some of them or all of them. We could be piecemeal, and we may not want to change something and vote not to change it. And it's totally up to us. So I think we can get through this if ready to start. The first change, and I'm looking at the document that was exchanged yesterday between Mr. Hall and I understand the town manager. The first paragraph said a yes vote on the new charter would maintain the current select board representative town meeting, town manager form of government. They want to, and by the way, that language, a yes vote would maintain, was out of another charter. That wasn't even an original sentence. I'm trying to remember which charter. It may have been Chelmsford. It was one of those charters. So it's not it's perfectly sensible statement. It's just saying that basically we keep the same form of government. And that's what a yes vote would do. But I don't know how you feel about it. We could take it out, and instead it would read, the proposed charter would maintain the current select board. So it's not a substantive change. Larry?
I like the way it is better, but I would be willing to change a yes vote on the new.
Yep.
And change that for the proposed, but I do object to the word would. It does. I would like to leave the word would out and say the proposed charter maintains.
Okay. Bill Cohan.
Maybe Scott can speak to this. I do think the clarification, a yes vote on the proposed charter maintains, and I agree with Larry's maintains, just cutting to the chase and just saying maintains. But I do think that it should say a combination of what has been proposed was blocked out, but maybe Scott can speak to this. I think he said a yes vote on the proposed charter maintains the current. I think we've got to be clear. I think that yes is necessary to understand that, yes, this is what it does, and then it's followed by that information.
So
Because
you-
this is the yes, and that's a summary, and and the selectmen are putting forth a no summary. So I think that we have to be clear on that. So I would suggest that we would, the language would read, maybe Scott wants to weigh in on this, because he's the one that said it, a yes vote on the proposed charter maintains the current select board.
So you wouldn't change anything except the word would come out.
No, I would change it. It says, I would leave it to a yes vote on, how did, Scott, are you there? Did you want to weigh in on that? What did you said something.
Yeah,
that
that's
sounded-
what I said, Billy. The a yes vote on the proposed charter. That was, I like leaving the yes vote in there because I mean all the ballot summaries that I've seen, say a yes vote would do this, a no vote would do that. So you hit it right on the head. A yes vote on the proposed charter maintains. I
Okay,
think
so
is-
we've got two views so far. Mr. Pai's view that you would remove the language, instead of yes vote would, and it sounds like Scott and Mr. Cohan would keep the wording, a yes vote would do these things. All I can say is that that is in other charters, because I've seen them, seen that phrasing, and, apparently there's really nothing wrong with it.
Let me join Bill.
Okay. And
I
Scott?
agree with what he says. As long as the word would
Yep.
is eliminated, I'm fine with a yes vote on the proposed charter maintains.
I agree with that as well.
Okay, so how does that differ from what we currently have, if at all? Let's see. Is that the only change?
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, go ahead.
if we keep a yes vote means blah, 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 shouldn't we have language that says a no vote means no change? Now,
That's the-
maybe that's implied,
Well,
but it's,
That's the first item in the select board's version, says a no vote means X. That's where theirs reads already,
well, again, I'm trying to get to not have two versions.
right?
Now,
Yeah,
I
that's
know
not
they have
gonna
to write a
happen, though.
sentence or two,
We're,
but
we're going to have two versions. There's no way we can only have one at this point. The time doesn't
Yep.
allow. Derek, the town manager, indicated that the time is not there for the select board to consider withdrawing their summary, that there'll be a yes summary and a no summary, and there's two summaries. I don't think so. I don't see how we can get around that at this point in time. It's, to merge them into one summary would be confusing. I think it should be clear to the voter when they walk into the polling location where they can say, this is the no summary, this is the yes summary.
So it looks so far, what we have would be changing just to one word. So it would read, if, when changed, that a yes vote on the proposed charter instead of the new charter maintains, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And who else is in favor of that version? Betsy?
Say this again.
5, 6.
Hang on a second. What were you saying?
We were just getting a vote on that first change. So it
Okay.
would read as it currently reads, except the word
Right.
new would be proposed
Yes, it would say a yes vote
on the proposed charter.
on the proposed charter
Maintains.
maintains. I guess that's a great, yes, I support that.
Do we have a consensus on that?
I just have one question. From what I understand, there is already a statement saying if the yes vote says. I just didn't want to duplicate what's already on the ballot.
So what are you suggesting, Leslie?
I'm just saying, Derek was saying there's already a yes vote says and a no vote says that's in the language. I just didn't want to make sure we weren't repeating what's already on the ballot.
Well, just so you understand, this is our summary. Following this summary is their summary, and they're required specifically under the language in our current charter to say a yes vote and a no vote and what each means in one sentence. Not,
Okay,
so, and that's what they did. They have a very short
Okay.
sentence on the no vote. The one on the yes vote's like a whole, got many, many lines because a lot of semicolons.
okay.
All right, so do we need to, let's just vote on that first change. All in favor of changing the word proposed,
It's going to be roll call.
new to proposed? Yes, Betsy?
I'm just voting yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, wrestling? Scott?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Okay, so we made that one change, changing the word new to proposed. The next change is in the third paragraph. And by the way, people in the audience that want to speak, it really doesn't work to try to negotiate this thing as part of a team effort and with the audience. We will have public comment at 8:30, but this has to be done by the commissioners, by the statute. So as you can see, we're going to have a lot of discussion just among ourselves. In the third paragraph, it currently reads, before we change it, if we do, government transparency and planning provisions require the select board to meet periodically with the school committee, planning board, and finance committee for the purpose of sharing information, including discussion of the town's progress towards implementing the goals of the master plan. The recommended or the suggested change would be delete the words government transparency and planning provisions and just start the sentence with the charter requires the select board to meet periodically. You'd be eliminating the word governmental transparency and planning provisions. That change is rather substantial. Go ahead.
First of all, I heard Mr. Brindisi's comment that this suggests something about the past, and I don't believe that it does. I think what we're doing is we're commenting on the present charter. It is absolutely the case that we spent a lot of time as a commission commending planning, and to eliminate that discussion of planning concerns me.
So what about transparency? Same thing?
I don't see a need to get rid of it, but I'm less passionate
Okay.
on that subject.
Bill?
I agree with Larry. I think that as an elected member of the commission, over a period of time, we had multiple conversations and discussions about this idea of, elevating the planning process in the charter. And I support what Larry is indicating.
Okay, I mean, the way the sentence works is, the sentence states that provisions in the charter involve, just to paraphrase it, planning and transparency require the select board to do these various things, meet periodically with the school committee and so forth. So is that an accurate statement? If it is, it's accurate. If there's no provisions in the charter that require them, then it would not be accurate. But we know what we put into the charter and why we put them in there, and having the multiple meetings between the different boards. And in my view, it was for transparency, so every board knows what the other boards are doing. It was perfectly open and transparent. And certainly planning was a key element, planning with the planning board and the select board.
Mr. Chairman, I would add
Okay,
that,
ready for comment, Frank?
yeah, there are always instances where you can and definitely should try to be more transparent. There is no surefire process that gets ultimate transparency, but that was one of our concerns, that we increase transparency, increase planning. So this is just, to my way of thinking, an accurate depiction of the process, the intent, and what these provisions are about. So I don't find it to be in any way, I don't think when people read these things, they don't think in the negative. They don't see this and go, oh my God, yes, there's been no transparency. If they feel that way already, they do. If they don't feel that already, they don't. It's, I think the language is neutral. So I would keep that.
Betsy?
Yes, I think one thing we might consider doing that might take away this concern, capitalize transparency, capitalize planning, capitalize provisions, and put a colon. So we say, here's what we're going to talk about now. So it'd be government transparency and planning provisions, colon, and then here's what we're saying about that. The charter requires the select board to meet periodically and so forth. So it would just be a heading, so that maybe that would take away that concern.
We have in the document doesn't really format well.
Oh, okay, so then cancel that idea.
Okay.
I don't see anything wrong with it as it's written.
Wrestling.
What about, and this is just a suggestion, what about adding to continue to promote transparency and planning? Or to promote? I don't know. It is why we put it in there.
So you're suggesting you would read something like, to promote transparency and planning, comma, the charter requires.
Or to continue to promote, yeah.
Okay. Any takers on that?
I don't have a problem with the promote. I do have a problem with the continue. I think that the point that we were making, and Frank spoke eloquently to, is that this charter is making a major statement. We think there should be more planning and transparency, especially planning. So
I would agree with Wrestling's word of promote, and I agree with Larry and Frank. I think that it helps clarify.
So Bill, how would you have it read?
I defer to Larry. Did you want to take a stab at
I
what
think Wrestling's idea was good.
Yep.
With the continues left out. To promote government transparency and planning, the charter requires.
I support that.
So we delete the word provisions
Yes.
and put a comma after planning? Do we need it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so up for a vote is the change in the third paragraph, so that it would read, to promote government transparency and planning, comma, the charter requires, and so forth, the select board, with an S on require. Is that it? Okay, ready for the vote on this change? David Peck?
No, because I don't think it's necessary. So, I think just starting with the charter requires is sufficient.
Okay,
So I am voting no on this particular change.
all right, I got it. Larry?
Yes.
Bill? Yes. Frank Mann?
Yes.
Wrestling?
Yes,
Betsy?
Yes,
I'll vote yes.
Scott.
So the language, oh, yeah, Scott.
I agree with David. I'm gonna be a no.
So, let's see. We have 2 noes, and we have, how many present? 1, 2, 5, so it looks like we have
6-2.
4, 5, 6 to 2? Let's see.
Are you voting yes?
Yeah, I'm voting yes. So-
Then 6,
so
yeah.
6 to,
wait for the Florida vote.
looks like 6 to 2. Yes? All right, vote is 6 to 2 on that change. Thank you. The next one is further on down on the page. The short paragraph starting with the representative town meeting. Currently, it would have read, will have 9 members. And the changes will say, will continue to have 9 members. The word to continue has been added.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
to I don't know if this will work, but there are 4 mentions where continues to,
Yes.
I don't know that they're necessary, but
in 4
I
places.
don't- in a spirit of going, the last item.
Yes, that's right.
I think if we wanted to take all 4 of them together, they might be non-controversial enough.
Right.
That we can just get those taken care of.
So just to restate what's been suggested, there are 4 items in this summary which are existing things already in our form of government. And we recite each of these 4 items, and the suggestion would be to add the words "to continue" to have these things. So it would show that these are things we already have in the existing charter, and we're not adding them. And it's in 4 different places. And Mr. Paisa's motion is to add the word "continue to" in those 4 places. Understood?
Does Larry need a second?
Yeah,
The consent agenda.
Kathleen, did you speak?
It's a consent agenda.
If Larry needs a second, I'll second.
Any other discussion on this one? Okay, all in favor of this change? Betsy?
Yes,
Wrestling?
Yes,
Scott? Yes.
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes?
Bill?
Yes.
And Frank?
Yes.
And I'm yes, so that looks like,
Yay.
Frank, you voted yes, right? 8 to-
Yes.
So that's 8-0, and that passes. And that gets us down to, let's see, next to the last paragraph, there was one word. The paragraph currently reads, "The charter maintains citizen safeguard," in quotation marks, "provisions that allow citizens to petition for placement on the townwide ballot of non-binding public policy advisory questions through an initiative process," and so forth. That refers to the 2 referendum processes of appealing a town meeting vote or to bring a non-binding public question, public advisory question. And the words that would be suggested to be stricken would be the word "citizen safeguard." So it just would read, "The charter maintains provisions," delete "citizen safeguard." All I can say is that came right out of, again, of another charter, because I remember specifically seeing those words. I liked the phrase "citizen safeguard" because I thought it meant something, but it's up to this commission. Larry?
To maintain continuity, we might want to change that to "the charter continues to provide,"
Right.
continues provisions, or maintains. But yeah, I think we can take out citizen safeguard.
Okay,
I'm okay with that.
all right. Very good. So the change here is just to add the word again, "continue," and delete the reference to citizen safeguard. Any further discussion on that one?
yes.
Yes,
Are
Betsy?
we saying the charter continues to maintain? Are we saying continues to? How are we writing that again? I'm sorry.
I think it would just say the charter continues with provisions that allow,
Yes.
or charter continues to provide provisions.
Provide provisions is,
Yeah, I know,
that's
yeah,
redundant.
not good.
Continues to provide?
Provide provisions,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
the
that's
same
true.
word, basically.
Yeah,
I guess we could use, I mean,
Well, maybe we
that's
should
the
just-
problem.
how about-
Maintains provisions that allow,
leave it alone then, except take out citizen safeguard.
and current, and current.
So,
If we're saying maintains, then that's redundant.
why don't, well, I mean, I feel comfortable removing what the attorney has suggested, and that is citizen safeguards, and let it read, "The charter maintains current provisions," in the spirit of that we're not saying it doesn't, it does, you know?
Well,
That's fine.
so what is the wording
I just accept, I mean, I don't know if anyone's made a motion, but I make a motion to accept the attorney's suggestions on this
Red line
paragraph.
version.
Okay, got it.
Second.
All in favor of the red line version that we already have in front of us for this one?
I
Ready for the
don't,
vote?
I had to see that. Could you read that for me, please, Bill?
Yeah, let's see. The charter contains provisions that
No.
allow citizens to
No,
petition.
Bill's
Maintains.
motion was maintains.
No. Let me, I'll read it, if you want,
Okay,
I'll
go
read
ahead.
it. I'm basically, on this red line that was sent by the Charter Commission's attorney with suggestions on the second to last paragraph. It says, "The charter maintains," and it is suggested by the attorney, strike citizen safeguard, and then put in current. So it would simply read, "The charter maintains current provisions." We are basically adopting that red line that was sent out to us earlier today, that when you printed it out, it showed the red line. Do you see that second to last paragraph, Betsy? Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying. Yep, it didn't turn out red line on my computer, but that's okay.
So, Bill, what is the
I
current-
agree with what you're saying.
What's a current provision as opposed to
Right, this is-
one that's not current?
I'm voting to, see right there? I'm voting to accept that.
Yeah, I understand, but I guess what's the reason for the word current?
Right,
Oh, okay, sorry.
I think that is redundant. I think, was it Larry that said so? And it would still be in keeping with the suggestion if we just remove current so that it's the charter maintains provisions that allow.
Yeah, I don't think-
Maintains
Okay.
current is redundant. They're obviously current if we're maintaining them.
I will acquiesce to the.
Okay, so
yeah,
let's vote
okay.
on the
So you will
language.
edit your vote?
Yes, I'm going to modify my motion to
So the
adopt what
wording
Frank
would
has
read that
suggested.
we're going to be voting on the charter maintains provisions that allow citizens to petition, so forth. Betsy?
May I say something here? Yes. It might be a little clearer for the reader to say, "The charter continues to allow citizens to petition for placement." No?
It's
All right.
it's a little
Just a
wordy.
suggestion. The charter continues to allow citizens, no?
It's changing the intent.
Let's see if
I did, it's, okay, well, I just thought the word maintains is a little weird.
we have
Okay,
a majority on the one
The
that we
lawyer
just...
vote, the lawyer.
So let's vote on the following language. The charter maintains provisions that allow citizens to petition for placement on the town ballot and so forth. Ready? Okay, let's vote. Betsy?
yes,
Wrestling?
Yes.
Yes. Scott?
Yes.
David Peck?
Yes.
Larry Pizer?
Yes,
Bill Cohan?
Yes.
And Frank Mann?
Yes.
Yes, and I vote yes. So that, again, is 8-0. Thank you. And that really completes the changes. So we will, I'll send a new summary to the town clerk tomorrow morning and say this is the summary that the commission has voted to place on the ballot in accordance with the statute. Any further discussion on this item?
Do we want to take a vote on that?
Yep. Go ahead, Bill.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the current
Right.
language of the summary,
Yep,
as
so-
voted,
so-
as changed by,
so
as
Bill's-
changed
Bill's
tonight.
motion is that we now accept the summary with the changes that we just separately voted, and that now we're voting on the entire summary as so changed. Has that been seconded? Mr. Pizer seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor of accepting the summary as changed and transmitting it tomorrow morning to the town clerk? Ready to vote? Betsy Hall?
yes,
Wrestling?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And David Peck?
Yes.
Larry Pizer?
yes.
Bill Cohan?
Yes.
And Frank Mann?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that's unanimous again to give her the entire summary. If, as to whether the town wants to continue with their summary and so forth, David, that's up to them, really. Yep. Okay, thank you very much. That takes care of that item.
Thank you for the consideration. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the question of costs associated with the new charter. It's been a bit of a moving target. There was, at the March 13th forum in this room, costs were presented by one of the town participants to the folks that were here of costs associated with the new charter. It came as a surprise. I'd seen none of those numbers before. And I have to say, we had the finance director in front of us several times. Anyways, it was the first time we'd seen any of those hard numbers. And as we started to look into them, we saw that there were some serious questions. And if this is going to be a consideration in a person as to whether or not they're going to vote for this charter, then they got to look a little deeper than just looking at a number to see whether it's, how was it formulated, whether it's correct. I'll just give one example, and then all of us can maybe speak to it. But there was a cost of $1.4 million or $1.375 associated with implementing this new charter that was thrown out there at that forum. And you all seen the spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet. And the biggest single item there was a $500,000, almost more than a third of it, was devoted to the master plan, which is, I think, really totally out of order, very misleading, and kind of ridiculous. As some of you have expressed to me in emails and others did, it's really laughable. I don't know what was trying to be proved by putting $500,000 responsible for the new charter for updating the for the master plan. A couple of items on that. The current cost of providing the usual processes for doing charter updates was not even taken into consideration, was not subtracted. I mean, this is an ongoing thing. We're doing it under our existing charter. We've been doing it. Nor are the grants even mentioned here that we usually get to help us in various components of the master plan. The new charter doesn't ask for a new master plan. It doesn't ask for anything more than the existing charter has, which is, it mentions, existing charter requires a master plan and requires it to be updated. The new charter says the same thing. The new charter does not state that we must have a brand new master plan every 10 years. It simply says it has to be updated at least once in that period of time. So the current update has not even been costed out yet. So to suggest that $500,000 was going to be spent even in the first several years is ridiculous, and I think everybody now has seen through that item. The efficiencies and cost reductions, another one that they were projecting is additional people are needed in various departments. And again, it completely misses the boat on the new charter, which is to establish efficiencies and cost reductions with internal reorganizations that the new charter offers. They're not, it won't require new people, it just requires things being done in a more efficient manner within the department. The new charter imposes very few direct costs when the costs of the current charter are removed. Just think about that. So it's really, you're suggesting that the new charter is going to generate all of these new financial requirements. None of the costs have been verified. None of them can take effect unless town meeting approves them. The new charter offers greater oversight on expenditures, more eyes looking at the spending. The current charter has given us a town budget that's getting way up there, but the new charter is going to have a much better review of existing finances than the current charter. We'll have an enhanced finance committee that's not going to be saddled with articles that don't deal with finance. It's going to have lots of eyes on the product. You know, one of the things that totally motivated this commission was to save the town money, just like we did with our commission work. We came in under budget, And we didn't want to spend any more money than we had to, and we suggested no new positions in the charter. These various committees, if you look at them, for example, what the planning department has to do could be done with a reorganization of the people within the planning. They should be doing it now. They shouldn't be charging people, seeing whether things align with the master plan and then assigning a dollar cost to that. That's something that should be automatically happening. I'd like to turn it over for comment by some of my fellow members here. I think, Frank, you had a nice statement, if you want to share that with us.
So I did respond to the posting of the costs, the specific costs and their attribution to various elements of the revised charter online. I did respond. It was directed to an online posting, but I want to be sure that, first of all, it's understood that this was my personal response online, not speaking on behalf of the charter. And of course, it's online on Facebook. There's a different tone to things. This committee is far more respectful. But there was, if the commission would like, I could read what I wrote, but I don't want to do so unless there's consent of the commissioners. I don't know if the other commissioners saw what I wrote in response to a posting, I believe, by Mr. Helm. I think that's where it was originated. So, is there a sense that?
Do you want to hear what Frank wrote? Yes.
Well, I'll just say, I read it. It was very thoughtful and thorough.
Okay.
So I don't need to have it read again.
You don't.
But
Okay, any objections? Okay, no objection, Frank.
All right. So critics of the town charter have come out with a detailed list of the expenses they say will incur if the revised charter is approved. And I must say, I'm shocked. Shocked at how silly many of these new costs are and that they would be willing to share them publicly. Let's just start with the master plan. Our existing master plan is close to 20 years old, and most people agree that it was never fully implemented, that we need to get started on a new plan. There is also agreement that the master plan process is necessarily an expensive one. Nevertheless, the planning board began that process close to 2 years ago. And yet, listed among the new costs that the revised charter, if approved, will cost the town is the price of a new master plan, $500,000. So I say it's, on the face of it, we can subtract that $500,000 from these alleged new costs and watch as their estimate drops immediately from 1.4 million to 900,000. But wait, there's more, of course, because the revised charter proposes legislative oversight and warrant article support. We're also told we'll need a new budget analyst, full-time, they say, and a part-time clerk at a cost of nearly $150,000, new costs. But warrant article support, which they mention, I believe if you read the charter, the revised version, is an effort to make sure that articles approved by town meeting are actually implemented. A spreadsheet and a ballpoint pen should be all that is required. And requiring that the master plan, new or old, be adhered to, we're told will also require 2 new full-time planners at a cost of $230,000. And because there would be 3 new select board members, the town manager would have need to hire a second full-time assistant town manager at a cost of just under $200,000, and it's not really understood what that person would do for $200,000 because there are 3 new selectmen. So I say never mind that these new hires are not required by the revised charter, and never mind that the planning director is already responsible for making sure that developers' projects meet our regulations, including our master plan. And never mind that the town manager is hired by and works at the pleasure of the select board, regardless of how many members it has, 3, 5, 7, or more. So removing those imaginary employees, that's my term, drops the cost down another $600,000 or so. And we haven't even addressed, as the Chairman was saying, addressed the possibility that the revised charter might actually, in some places, save the town money if we were inclined to look for those savings. You could argue, for example, that with a new master plan and a charter that insists that it be adhered to, we would no longer have a need for a director of planning, a cost savings of at least $200,000. I'm not going to make that argument, though, because I believe our present director of planning and his experienced staff are capable of implementing the regulations and bylaws of the master plan of the town if and when directed to do so by the people of the town. But I don't believe that's what's happening here, not in my opinion. In my opinion, this has nothing to do with the people of the town. What's happening here, and has been going on for 2 years, ever since the town voted in a slate of charter commissioners that were disposed to retaining our existing form of government, is that certain elected officials have been attacking another group of elected officials. I am an elected charter commissioner, and I am proud of that. I am proud not just for what we proposed, which I believe to be at a minimum an improvement to our existing charter, but I am even more proud of the process by which we reached a consensus, voting 9-0 to approve the revised charter. We were never a homogeneous group. Though a majority favored the town meeting form of government, there was strong support for other forms and disagreement on many issues. Meanwhile, as we openly debated changes to the charter, we were attacked. Attacked for not being open-minded, though we were. Attacked for ignoring what they called the will of the people, though we were elected by those same people. Though the charter process is governed by state statutes, the Select Board pushed for a non-binding referendum that they expected would reveal again, quote, the will of the people, but they were wrong again. Toward the end of the 2 years, the chair of the Select Board publicly said that the charter revision was, quote, crap, and that none of us, meaning the charter commissioners, should be allowed to run for elected office. So that's another cost. What about that cost? The cost to the people's faith in government. That's one of the reasons I can't take their list seriously. But decide for yourself. Read the revised charter and see if you can find the requirement that we hire 8.5 full-time employees. Ultimately, it's your decision, and that's how it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. The other comment?
Yes, I have a comment, Bill.
Betsy?
I know from emails that I have received that some chairmen of precincts are meeting to discuss the charter, that they have been emailed this false list of costs. I'm wondering if it's possible for someone in our commission to write up the actual costs and send that as well to the chairman of all of the precincts so that when people meet. Now, they can talk about it. I was also told that these false figures were also handed out at Pine Hills in people's mailboxes, that they were given to people who will be voting on this issue in part of Pine Hills, where I have a good friend who brought me a copy of this. So I think that sometimes when false information goes out, it can seem very real and very true. I don't think we can counter all of it, but I think it would behoove us to try to figure out ways for, beyond Frank's letter, which I think is excellent, to actually give what's this charter going to cost the town, and it maybe even show, no, none of these false figures are actually in the charter. I'm not sure how we would approach that, but I do know that there are a number of people in town who honestly believe that this charter, if they vote for it, will cost them $1.4 million.
I mean, if you look at the various items that make up that spreadsheet and just think about them, there's one here that talks about compliance with the master plan. You know, this is that provision that we have to require projects, warrant articles, ordinances, bylaws, a determination to be made that they are consistent with the master plan, because that's why you have a master plan. you shouldn't have one if you're not going to follow it. But anyways, that provision of just checking to see whether those things comply or not, a cost of $230,000. I mean, you know,
Bill, I don't think most people have any idea about a master plan. A lot of this lingo that's normal, we understand it, we know what it means. A lot of people, I think, especially people who are moving here from Delaware and New Jersey and so forth, they've been alarmed. This new charter will raise your taxes.
what I'm saying, we put it in provisions to require efficiency and results and follow up and follow through and all that sort of thing, and then they assess a dollar cost to it. Another
I
one
don't
is
know that they will read the whole
the
charter.
Legislative
Somebody will-
Oversight Committee, for
Their neighbor will
example.
tell them, this is what it's gonna cost, don't vote for it. So I don't know if there's a way we can counter that, but I think it would be helpful.
Well, if they look at this spreadsheet, you can see what they put on it. For example, the Legislative Oversight was just being sure that an article's being followed that was voted, $85,000 for that. So I encourage people to look at the financial breakdown. Fortunately, and to their credit, the Committee of Precinct Chairs is going to have a debate or discussion tomorrow night about this very subject of finances and those numbers, and really look under them and dig down to see whether there's any basis for it, or whether they're just, you know, what's behind it. Any further, David?
This strikes me as nothing but a scare tactic.
Of course.
Completely. However, there are new costs in this charter with 2 more selectmen. So the only known added cost is going from 5 to 7 selectmen. Every other thing in here or in their scare tactics is what departments should be doing as part of their job. You know, the job may change, you know, as the charter changes. And the other thing I'd point out is part of our transition recommendation is study of the consolidation of the DPW and school maintenance. And in fact, there may be, you know, distinct savings there too. So I think this Excel spreadsheet tells me that the powers that be or whatever are worried that this charter might be supported by the people, and they're creating new tactics to get to know. But the reality is, as you pointed out, you know, other efficiencies are expected, and I think virtually everything else are departments expected to do their job.
Right. Thank you. Let's see, it being 8:30, we turn to public comment.
I'm going to be real quick.
Yes.
Members of the commission,
Wait,
thank you for your
Mr.
courtesy, and let me speak for a couple.
Just say you're Selectman.
Charlie Bledsoe,
Okay.
citizen of Plymouth, taxpayer. I just thank you for letting me speak. I'll be real quick. The commission was elected to do a job, and whether I agree with your recommendation, and I can debate here, you know, about slates. 6 members got elected on a slate that was for a town meeting. I'm not going to debate that tonight, because what's done is done. And you recommended a town meeting form of government, and it's not up to me, whether I like it or not, it doesn't matter. It's up to the citizens of Plymouth to vote, okay, and how they feel. Do they want a change? Do they want the same thing? It's up to them when they get to the ballot. The problem I have is tonight I saw this, tonight too, is our board got the, and I'm speaking as a selectman now, we got the ballot summary yesterday at our meeting. So we had one day to look at that, and right away, things jumped out at me. And I appreciate the changes you made tonight. And there's only one that I'm completely, that you didn't change, that was the most biased. And that's the first part. Let me just get my notes. The most concerning thing was a yes vote on the new charter, those words right there. If it just said, the new charter maintains the current select board representative, and leave those words out, I'd feel a lot better about that. This is a very biased, because you get that and it goes all the way down to explain the summary. And then you got one line that says the no vote makes no changes to the charter. And then you have, again, a yes vote, again, in another paragraph about the yes vote. To me, it's very biased. If you could have just taken that out, I think this would have been very fair, and I'd have no problem with this summary. So I guess I'm concerned with, first of all, Betsy making a motion right away without any discussion. And there was no public comments beforehand. I think if you did the public comment in the beginning, people could have voiced their opinion. Taxpayers, if they were here and wanted to, could voice their opinion, what they think of this. But you didn't want to hear it. And Betsy, when I called this last night, and I said it was biased. It was a very biased article by a biased commission. And I don't take that back tonight because Betsy proved how biased she is. She wanted to just stuff it down everybody's throat tonight. And luckily, David Peck, Larry, a few of you guys realized that we may want to listen to some of these changes that were recommended by your council. This wasn't something that the select board did. This was your council recommended these changes. And believe me, that if you did this change as well as the rest of them, I'd be happy with this ballot. When we went through the redistricting, some of you folks were on that committee for the redistricting. And I know we appointed members to that redistricting committee, and we were supposed to appoint 5 members. And we had about, 9, 15, and we appointed everybody. We voted to, the board voted to let everybody have something to say about it, because it's a democracy. Plymouth, it's a democracy. And the more people that have input, the better. So in how many delays did we have? I think there were 14 changes, Larry? How many changes to that, to our redistricting? 14? I believe there was 14. Yeah. So tonight, I'm glad you listened a little bit and you made some changes tonight, but I just didn't see the fairness that we saw in the redistricting. So with that being said, I just hope people read the charter, and I hope, this has become political. I'm sorry, these numbers now starting to get political right here, what I'm starting to hear, okay? And we have a member that's running for office and is using that numbers on his campaign. And I've seen it, and he can't deny it. And I just think we got to leave politics out of it. This is about what's in the best interests of the citizens and taxpayers of Plymouth. That's what it should be about. And I wish we could have done this, and then you could have discussed and done your votes.
Charlie, do you want to submit that information to the committee that you were referencing to the committee?
This is the ballot.
Oh, that'd be great if you want to submit that to us.
No, it's the changes
Okay,
that
okay. It's the same
came
thing.
from this.
Right, got it.
So-
Thank you. Didn't know if you were referencing
No,
it.
no,
I didn't know
no,
if you
no.
wanted to include it in our
What-
record.
What the council, I was happy
Yep.
with the changes that council that you had before you,
Right.
except we should have taken a yes vote on the new charter. Take that out. That should come out, I believe.
Got it.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yes, please state your name for the record.
Dave Golden, Precinct 7. I'm going to pass out some paperwork. quick.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, folks. Again, my name is Dave Golden. I am a town meeting member and chair of Precinct 7. I apologize to the folks who are online here tonight. What I've handed out is the documentation that is circulating that Chairman Abbott and Mr. Mand referenced earlier regarding the additional costs to the town if the new charter is adopted. I want to start out, though, going back to something that Mr. Bletzer said. I do wish that this commission voted to take out the initial language about a yes vote maintaining our current form of government. I believe it's superfluous because a no vote also maintains a town manager and town meeting form of government. So it doesn't really need to be stated that a yes vote will maintain that form. But that's not really what I'm here to talk about tonight. I'm here to discuss the costs that this proposed charter will incur for the taxpayers here in Plymouth. There's been a lot of discussion here tonight about whether these are false figures, whether or not they have any basis in reality, because the charter itself doesn't recommend any new positions being created. But I think that that's a dereliction of duty on the part of the charter commissioners. On January 19th at our COPC meeting, I first asked Mr. Abbott what the costs would be associated with the adoption of the charter. I specifically asked about the additional compensation that would be given to our select board members, what the additional costs would be as a result of having a third town meeting, and what the additional costs would be for staffing. Mr. Abbott, on that night, didn't have numbers prepared and didn't, it seems, follow up, because on March 13th at the Charter Forum, he was surprised to see the information that I've presented to you here, you folks here tonight. We're now at April 19th. It's almost 3 months, actually 3 months to the day since I first asked Mr. Abbott. And it seems that there's been no staffing assessment, that the town manager hasn't been consulted, that the finance director hasn't been consulted, our town clerk, our budget analyst, our planning department. No one has been consulted on what the additional workload will look like and how they will spread that out. So I believe that the Charter Commission has not done their duty. On the point of the optional town meeting, because Mr. Abbott pointed out that it is optional, the only option that Mr. Brindisi and his team have is to prepare for that third town meeting. Now what that means is that they're gonna have to budget for it. And what that means is they're gonna have to tap the taxpayers in Plymouth for an additional town meeting, for technology, for OTI, for every element that is required in order for us to go through a town meeting. If they don't do that, then they're in dereliction of their duty. So, I think that folks need to see these numbers. They do need to understand that this is going to cost us almost $1.5 million in the first year and $952,000 every subsequent year after that. And that's in today's dollars. So inflation, raises, pay raises for additional staff will necessarily make that $950,000 figure go up. So, I take offense that Ms. Hall's not even here listening to me talk about these figures, because she, on face value, rejects them. But these figures were put together by the professionals that we employ in this town, people in the finance department, the town manager's office, the planning department, the town clerk, and members of the select board have gone through this charter with a fine-tooth comb and said that these are the people that we need to bring on in order to execute this charter. And I actually believe that these figures are not nearly what they're going to end up being, because we don't know what the unintended legal consequences are going to be of the adoption of this charter. We don't know if anyone's going to try to challenge it in court when it comes to be. There's a lot of conversation as to whether or not the charter has provisions that are in line with the Mass General Law. We'll have to see if it passes. But the process for making this document is just the same as what they do when they prepare for town meeting. When they're proposing a new staff member, when they're proposing a budget, this is what we pay these folks to do. Lynn Barrett has how many years as our finance director? Derek Brindisi was hired as our town manager for his expertise in running a town. They know what it's going to take to make this charter happen, and that's what this figure represents. So thank you all for letting me to speak here tonight, and hopefully you vote no.
Pat?
Good evening, Pat Adelman, Precinct 12. I wanted to talk about Mr. Bletzer's complaint about the Precinct Advisory Committee. As I understood it, after the 2020 census, there was a scrambling to go over the precinct, and there was already a cost, because I believe they had to hire Mr. Pizer, who had left his job as town clerk, as an advisor. And the people that were appointed to that committee were all people who were available during the day. There was nothing for the working person that, you know, can't meet during the day. So that's one argument I would have with Mr. Pizer. I'm glad this proposed charter accounts for planning before you have to scramble to make it before the state sets everything up. And about this, the way this budget was proposed, it was proposed by the town manager, who was appointed by the select board, who extended his contract after a very short time. So again, it's proposed with bias because, of course, the town manager has to please the people who appointed him. And I think even if some of these charges are true, I think it's worth it to have a more responsible, responsive, and charter that accounts for planning. Above all, I think planning is so important for the future of our town. Thank you for listening.
Did you want to, okay?
Hi, thank you for letting me come up again. Dave Golden, Precinct 7. I just want to respond. I don't believe that Mr. Medici is pandering to anyone in this situation. As was just stated, the select board has already extended his contract. So if he has any time that he can go against their will, it's now. He's got a contract signed and sealed. So I don't believe that this is a politically motivated piece at all on the part of the town manager. He's beyond reproach. He's an excellent servant for this community, and I take issue with that accusation.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the time. I'm addressing the people of Plymouth. My name is Tim Lawler, Precinct 5. I'm a member of the Plymouth Advisory and Finance Committee. I am not representing the committee right now. I am fully aware of what it takes to run the town of Plymouth financially. For the town meeting that just took place, the committee has to know and understand this amount of financial information regarding the town's budget. This is the amount of information that the FinCom needs to know. Every one of the members works diligently under the leadership of Kevin Canty to review everything that matters financially to the town. I do not see or know anyone on the Charter Committee that is on the Advisory or Finance Committee, not one. It is my understanding that this new revised charter will cost the townspeople of Plymouth an extra $1.5 million to start out with on the first year. Based on my knowledge and understanding of the numbers, the townspeople of Plymouth cannot afford that price. It is my understanding that every year thereafter, it will cost up to $950,000 each year. That's perpetual. The townspeople of Plymouth cannot afford this price tag. The cost of this fiscal irresponsibility will do nothing but raise our taxes and cost more monies. Let's say we roll this out 5 years. That's $1.5 million. There are 28,000 residencies in Plymouth, i.e. property taxpayers. To pick up $5.5 million in expenses, taxes are going to go up. I see a lot of red in this document. And it's not the red changes. I see a lot of cost. There is no mention in this document at all, in these new revisions to the Plymouth Charter, about significant financial expenses. Not one mention. 5.5 million in 5 years? That to me is very significant. I ask the people of Plymouth, I ask the people in this room, what else is the commission hiding from the taxpayers of Plymouth? Vote no on question 1. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Martha?
Hello, Martha Votrain, Precinct 4, attending these meetings as a representative of the League of Women Voters as part of the Observer Corps for the Charter Commission. And I've just received this, heard of this for the first time when Mr. Golden came up. And I'm wondering, I don't see any names on this. Where does this information come from? And, nor do I see any dates. So is there, or anything related to any studies related to these numbers? So I'm wondering if you can tell me where these are from, where all this information is from, and how long it took to get it, and the whole story behind it. If it's known to anyone, it's not known to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again, Dave Golden. The document that you have in front of you, Martha, was put together by a number of folks in the planning department, the town manager, Harry Helm, as well as some folks from the planning board. It was done at the request of Harry, I believe, to figure out what this charter is going to cost the taxpayers. The initial summary of costs was slightly lower than this and was prepared in advance of the March 13th charter forum. Lynn Barrett was also involved in drafting these numbers. They were updated, I believe, late last week to reflect what you see in front of you today. Thank you.
Yes, Pat?
And I guess town council was also involved.
I understand, so it was town staff during town hours preparing a document that's used in a ballot question campaign. Can you explain the conflict of that? Thank you.
Okay. Any other comment from members of the commission? So the question is whether we want to continue or whether we want to meet Monday or not. Michelle, did we do anything on the budget? Okay, so we'll have to have another meeting at some point to approve our final budget. As you probably remember, we had money left over, which we turned over to the select board so that they could defray the cost of sending the charter out. But I think we still have something in the till to pay any remaining bills, but I think we're pretty close to where we should be.
It might be about 1,500.
Right. We tried to gave them most everything we could afford, but reserved a little bit to pay final expenses. Any other comments?
I have a comment, Bill.
Yes, Betsy.
Yes, I would like to clarify my earlier actions. I remember a statement that someone told me once. They said, sometimes trying to appease people is like throwing steaks to a tiger, hoping it'll become a vegetarian. And I think maybe that's what we did tonight. There are people who very strongly want a form of government in this town that has very concentrated power. They want a very small group of people to have power. And although we made the changes, most of the changes that they requested, I don't think that it'll in any way appease them, and I don't think that they will suddenly be have a different tune. I did make that motion for that reason. I did not want to spend our time tonight on insignificant changes that in fact our counselor did not recommend. He just said wouldn't hurt. But I would rather have spent this time elucidating for our public what our charter changes mean and why we included them. But I do want to say that obviously we had to have a motion on the floor. I stand by my motion, but I certainly was willing, as soon as the commission decided they wanted to discuss the changes, I certainly was willing to discuss them and voted for the changes as recommended by our own members. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you very much.
Betsy. If there's not any further comment from members of the commission, I think we're in order to adjourn. It's about 9 o'clock. And whether or not we meet Monday, we'll make a decision the next day or so if there's anything further we need to do. One item that I was going to do tonight, if we had time, was to bring up 3 or 4 items which we keep hearing the people misconstruing certain provisions of the charter. But we can perhaps get to that at a later date, but in time for certainly before May 20th, as to how these various provisions work. Any other comment? Motion to adjourn? Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.